Hello. Welcome back after lunch. My job is partly to wake you up again and to leave you with some a bit of controversy that will generate some discussion. I was told that we had to introduce ourselves, so I'm going to do it very quickly in a slide. I've been in media, politics. I work for George Soros. I've been an executive, and I'm running this club of universities. The key thing I've noticed in my life, and it was pretty random, some of this stuff, was the word university. Whatever I did, I ended up writing, thinking, being a university. And what I do believe, most sincerely, is that universities are the heartbeat of any community. I actually go further, but we haven't got time to talk about it. I think they are the heartbeat of democracy. But notice the middle one means that I was here in the 80s. I've been coming to Krakow for more than 20 years. I've seen a fantastic change. I worked with dissidents, and I helped set up the Stefan Battery Foundation. So I regard this very much as home from home, and I'm very proud to be here. This is our club of universities. You can see that the Jagiellonian is very safely nestled in there, one of the great universities. Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. There's a spread of our universities across Europe. And basically, we're looking for one top university in each country. And this is the kind of thing we do. We bring bright young scholars together to talk about issues of common and current concern. So universities, basically, they're an enormous engine for local growth. This is even before they do anything specific. Just by being in the locality, they generate growth. And they generate ideas, and they generate talent, and you've heard a lot about that this morning. And they have various output sources. These are the traditional ones, okay? They're traditional ones. If you're in the new high-tech Y, Z, whatever generation, maybe this is all a bit kind of boring. But what I want to suggest to you is not to overlook it if you are a company looking for ideas. So, the Jagiellonian. Just remind ourselves of the fantastic history. You know this history much, much better than I do. So 650 years old. There was a fantastic party in this town last year. I was invited and sat in all the various functions. And there was a fantastic opera actually written by Piotr, who performed here yesterday. Now, there was a long period of evolution, some very famous people, including, of course, the wonderful Copernicus. And then the real blossoming in the 1890s and the 1930s, what is called a golden age. So huge growth of science, departments, medicine, geography. I've got a list somewhere here. And a lot of excitement, Jewish culture, one of the premier sources in the world for thinking about matters to do with Judaism, and then crushed by the war, and then frozen. I call it frozen by communism, okay? So an institution with a great history having to start again to some extent in 1989, and has done pretty well in 25 years. It's done pretty well, but if you are a business out there, you might think, well, couldn't they do more? Couldn't they reach out more? Couldn't there be more for me, for my company out there? But I want you to just pause and think about the risks for a 650-year-old institution. If you're a one-year-old institution, you take risks. And we were told this morning, take risks. If you don't take risks, you don't grow. And if it goes wrong, you take another risk. When you're an ancient university, and a university is a particular kind of organization, you have to be a little bit cautious. I think that, I don't know whether, yeah, there's a little bit of the slide missing. So I'll come back to that. I want to talk about the risks in a minute. So the two issues that you might want to think about, and we've only got a few minutes, so I'm wrapping up very quickly. One is technology transfer. So all universities innovate, few really succeed in transferring those ideas. So how can we, as a society, as a community, make it work better? make it work better between, and I'm calling you guys business, and I'm calling us, or me, universities. So one idea is pre-investment, where you actually invest in advance to help ideas emerge, R&D in advance. And actually, R&D in Krakow has gone up, and investment has gone up, but not as much as other comparable towns, and not in, for example, in Sweden or in Germany. So that is something to think about. The figures I got was about 1.1% R&D locally, and in other places it's above 2% and sometimes 3%. So that's something to think about. Post-development, now, in order to do post-development, you need information. You need to know what is going on. And that's why these output sources can be quite useful. But you need to have connections. So one of the suggestions is that there should be some kind of a university innovation council where leading members of leading companies can actually meet with leading researchers. Now, you could have monthly meetings where researchers present findings, or 2 or 3 sessions like this. It could be run by Aspire. But actually learning and listening and picking up ideas. I went to a talk about aging. I discovered, this was at the Said Business School in Oxford, I discovered that actually we're not far away from being able to switch the aging gene off, because once we've procreated, apparently the aging process sets in, because we've done our duty in an anthropological sense. But the gene could be switched off, and we could actually live quite easily to 140 years. We'd have to replace things, and like a worn-out car, eventually you can't replace too many broken things. Well, that set of ideas has given rise to a whole set of new spin-off ideas which are happening in Oxford, simply from a brilliant talk given and attended by 100 entrepreneurs. Incubation centers. Now, I've got a problem here because I've got things at the bottom of the slide. I don't know what. The other 2 items on here were technology parks, and you've got one here which is done very successfully. We're not sure how successful because it's hard to measure what might have happened and what might not have happened. But I think the evidence suggests that it's not been as successful as it could be as compared to other parks. So maybe we need more energy and more ideas going in there. This is one of the spin-offs from Oxford. It's called Oxford Instruments. Oxford has spun off 70 companies which are listed on the stock exchange in the last 20 years or 25 years. And this is one of the most well-known, and it does a lot of handheld high-tech stuff, so you can measure your health, and you can measure gases, and you can measure all kinds of items that you need to. Now, the other question I want to leave you with, this is my final slide, is about skills. We talk a lot about skills. And we've got to think a little bit about knowledge workers against skilled workers. There's been a great debate in education between what we call the more progressive style of education and the more formal style of education. The progressive style of education was actually invented by these 2 gentlemen. John Locke invented the idea of each of us being an individual, learning from our experience, learning through dialogue, through open learning. And Jean-Jacques Rousseau famously said, you know, we're all born free and equal, but everywhere we end up in chains. In other words, we have an open book, and we can learn whatever it is to become humans of our own potential. But there is a rival theory which says you should learn X, you should learn Y, you need to slog through these exams. And what we have to think about is, what do we want our great universities to do? And our great universities, which are international, by design, by custom, by necessity, in order to be great, they have to be international, they have to be connected, they have to share their findings, they have to learn from each other, they have to have visiting scholars. Great universities produce complex, ambitious, argumentative international graduates. A lot of you are probably from that mold. And what we don't want to do is to trap them into producing narrow kinds of people simply because that helps a particular growth model in a particular company, because you don't know what opportunity costs you're losing. So what I want you to do is to leave here, the takeaway message is to respect the great jewel that you have, the Jagiellonian, and to work with it to make it better for yourself, and to make it better for itself, and to help it produce more international equipped and connected and flexible graduates. There's a couple of bits missing off the end of my slides, but I think that's fine. Thank you.